The rumor mill is flying that the Utah Jazz are looking to trade their 10th pick of the NBA draft. Should they do it? Why would they do it? It's next on Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. Today on Locked on Jazz, we will discuss the rumor from Michael Scotto of Hoopshype that the Jazz are looking to trade the 10th pick. Why would they do it? Should they do it? And are they in a position to start moving away from some of these assets that they've accumulated to go get players? I watched last night a less encouraging watch of NBA draft players last night. More Jared McCain, a little Cody Williams, a little Isaiah Collier. We'll talk about those three. The Wolves live for another day, and we'll hit on some of that, some interesting little notes on that, and the Jazz work out a player, plus two funny stories coming out of the end of that Timberwolves-Wolves game. So I've got all that coming up for you today. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day, and thank you to the everydayers who've made Locked On what it is. We are free. We're available on all podcasting apps, so please subscribe and follow. We're also available on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button. It's free, and hit the little bell button that notifies you whenever we do a show. If anyone's wondering, on YouTube, yes, my shirt is Ron Boone. I am wearing a Ron Boone shirt, so it's a good day. All right, let's get to it. Michael Scotto, Hoopshype, Utah is expected is expected the rumor that is out there. Let me make sure I word it correctly to get the exact rumor that's out there from Michael Scotto is exploring, not expected. Utah is exploring trading the number 10 pick and their other first-round pick this year. Hoopshype, Michael Scotto reports, Ryan Smith would like to add star talent to the Jazz, and Danny Ainge is aggressively monitoring the trade market. According to Hoopshype, this was 12 hours ago that this came out. So let's discuss it. Would the Jazz trade the 10th pick of the... Absolutely. Zero question on that. The Utah Jazz would absolutely 100% be willing to trade the 10th pick of the draft if it's yielding something that the Jazz obviously thinks worth. They've been very aggressive, both trading away players as well as acquiring since Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck became the team. So there's no reason to think the Jazz wouldn't be looking to trade the 10th pick. Should they? So this gets interesting. The other day, somebody came out, I think it was either ESPN or The Ringer. It was The Ringer, with the top 25 players under the age of 25. We don't have any. So we're in the midst, 18 months into a rebuild in which really we've only had one draft taking our own players, right? We got Walker Kessler and Ochai Agbaji in trades after the draft. We didn't draft either Walker or Ochai, and we've moved on from Ochai, who, by the way, I think just announced he's getting married. So congratulations. He's just the best dude. Super happy for him. And then we've drafted Taylor, and we've drafted Keontae, and we've drafted Bryce, and we'll see. But none of them, in their limited time, have shown yet that they are of the top 25 players under the age of 25. I don't think there's any dispute to this list. Jabari Smith was 25, and he's far better than Taylor at this point in time. I don't know that he always will be, but right now he is. And so the one question I would have on this, and I get nervous, or I'd ask the question, is the losing is hard and the rebuilding is painful. But if you accelerate it just to get out of the pain, do you actually ever see the success? Now, obviously, you're going to make a value judgment on that 10th pick of the draft of whether or not the value you're getting in return is better. And there's going to be some teams that are in some money situations and money problems where maybe you are going to be able to give them something that gets them out of their money problems quicker with a more stringent tax situation than we have. Now, it's also going to all bubble up here shortly when the new TV contract kicks in. We're going to have another massive spike. We're going to have average salaries in the range of 40 million. And max is at 70. But then that leads to the next question. And this is the one I don't think any of us really know the answer to, that I think gets really difficult. So if we use the 10th pick to go get a qualified, established player, to go with Lowry Marketing, Collins, Sexton, who's our third best player? John Collins, Walker, Kessler, Keontae George. How good do we get? How good can we actually get this year, and how good can we actually be at piecing the thing together? I had always believed from the day Rudy and Donovan were traded, and we haven't done this, that we were going to be drafting top 5-ish for 3 years. Yeah, that would have been ugly. Thank goodness probably we haven't done that. But that's what I expected. That we would be drafting top 5-ish for the first 3 years. So that would have been the Keontae George Taylor Hendricks year. So that's the 23 draft, the 24 draft, and the 25 draft. At which point, I thought we would probably have acquired hopefully 2 good players in the top 5 drafts. And then we would have Cleveland and Minnesota's picks for 25, where both teams were probably still good, depending what happens with Donovan. Then we would start on the upward trajectory, and hopefully by 27, 28, and 29, either Cleveland or Minnesota would start their route down. And then that would allow us, while we're working our way up, to go add a really nice talent at a cheap price to a team that's already established. So that I really didn't expect from the day we traded Donovan and Rudy that there would be any real upward trajectory in trying to get wins, if I'm being totally honest, until maybe the 26th season. Right? So we had the 22-23 season where we started really well and then traded. We had the 23-24 season, the 24-25 season, which is next year, and then the 25-26 season. That's kind of maybe the first time a whole extra one more season from now that I thought we'd make an upward trajectory. If you're trading the 10th pick, you're making that upward trajectory to get a player now much sooner than that. That might be right. I'm just saying it's not anything I ever expected. So you would be doing it because you believe that whatever players you can acquire with 10 is, 1, better than what you can get at 10. 2, coupled with Lowry, Collin, Keontae, Walker, John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, begins to give you a team that can actually do something. Now that's even harder, because now you have to look at the Western Conference and figure out where is it that you're making that inroads. And that would be the next question I would ask. And I don't love this one, but I think and I don't actually know how to ask this question. And the question is, what is the best case scenario we could pull off in a trade market or in free agency this year to get us where in the standings? And then the ugly part of that question is, if that answer is not good enough, are we better off just drafting at 10, playing Keontae George, whoever we take at 10, Taylor Hendricks, Lowry Markkanen, and Walker Kessler, and quite frankly, let them all develop and being right there for Cooper Flag? So when we look at trading 10 in the bubble of the moment, makes a lot of sense, particularly if you got a team that's in financial trouble that you can take advantage of. But in the bigger picture, I think it gets super complicated, and it's hard to really figure out if that's the right move. All right, a disappointing watch last night, if I'm being totally honest. Or I wouldn't want to call it disappointing because I saw talent. a not as encouraging watch as the few watches I've had of college talent so far. I'll talk about that when we're just getting started here on Locked On Jazz. Today's Tuesday edition of Locked On Jazz Wednesday edition of Locked On Jazz. Happy birthday, Dad! We'll touch on that in a second. Is brought to you by our good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The lineup of Hyundai cars. Someone asked me, I was talking the other day, like, why Hyundai? We've bought 3 of them. I said, it's just, to me, it was really simple. One, if you do the research on what you get for the dollar value, Hyundai comes to the top of the list. So if you're looking for, like, what cars do I get where I can get the safety features, the bells and whistles, all those things, then you immediately have the Hyundai at the top of your list. Okay, then number 2 for me was I like the way they drive, I like the way they look, and like the way they perform. And then 3 is the Murdochs. In Utah over 80 years, absolutely fabulous people, making sure you have a great experience, very tied to the community, and therefore making sure that you have what they like to refer to as the no regrets experience. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street. By the way, the 2024 Hyundai Tucson is now $229 per month for 36 months. That's a pretty great deal. And the Hyundai Elantra is $199 there for you. The beautiful Palisade is available at 3.49% for 48 months. How do you get that percentage interest rate right now? Those are all available at Murdoch Hyundai. If you're going to stop by, feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com to make sure that we can get you your VIP treatment that you deserve as a Locked On everydayer. That's Murdoch Hyundai. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com to set you up. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app today and have your answers for your summer concerts, going to any ball games. Maybe you're going to sneak into a playoff game, either hockey or NBA at the final step. Well, Game Time makes it easier and faster for you. They have everything you need. Last-minute deals, saving up to 60% on buying. Last-minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater. Flash deals, where you give it the in-app deals. Zone deals, where you set the section you want and they choose the seats. All-in pricing, you toggle that feature on. You don't get surprised at checkout. Seat views to make sure you know exactly where you're going to end up. And the lowest price guaranteed. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if it's not. Game Time ticket coverage also has flexible customer service policy in the ticket, most flexible in the ticket industry. It's all at Game Time. And with the code LOCKEDONNBA, you get $20 off your first purchase. So download the Game Time app now, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, to get $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Enjoy the summer with Game Time. Happy birthday to my dad, 85 years old, still skied 30 days this year. Incredible. Happy birthday to the director of operations of Locked On, Kylie Young. Truly 2 of the most remarkable people I've ever met. So if you're born May 29th, maybe good things happen for you. I think JFK might have been born May 29th, if I remember correctly. Is that right? Wow, this is a really random John F. Kennedy birthday, May 29th, 1917. Pretty good dude. May 29th, a special day. So happy birthday to all of them. And happy birthday to anybody else out there who's got a May 29th birthday. Have you made the switch yet to the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 app or 24/7 fast channel over on YouTube? You can get it at Locked On Sports Today, or you can grab it on Amazon Fire TV. It's coming to some more places here shortly. But should be a big day of NBA coverage on Locked On Sports Today. In fact, I have a sneak peek. I just got the internal text message that tells us. Let's see if I can find it. Nope, I only have my ROM. Oh, there it is. What do I got for you today? Coming up at 8:30 is the Wolves postcast. At 9 is the Mavericks show. At 9:30 is the Lakers show. At 1:50 is the Wolves regular show. All of those will actually be available for you later in the day as well on the Locked On Sports Today app. Go to YouTube, be checked in with all of that excitement. I'm throwing it up right now. You can go grab all of our coverage on Locked On Sports Today, by the way, at 24/7, both on Amazon Fire and on YouTube. I think I missed my little window to get my channel up. All right, we'll do that later. All right, let's get back to the watching of players. So I loved Jared McCain when I watched him the other day, and then I watched him last night against Pitt. I was a little intrigued by this Bub Carrington kid. It's interesting this year when I'm watching. It does feel a little bit like those players that are NBA talent are a little more obvious, like that they're actually noticeably different than the other people on the playing field, which is generally a pretty good thing to see. That's always been kind of one of my rules, because this Carrington kid kind of jumped out at me a little bit. Like I was trying to figure out who he is and what there is about him. He's a young, kind of athletic, interesting player. So anyway, McCain was just, I still like him. The shot didn't go in, so he wasn't as awesome in that day, but he was very absent from the game. And I don't know if that's just a case of being at Duke and they have so many talents and he's not their primary ball handler. Like he only had 14 isolation attempts all year. He only had 69 pick and roll attempts. He was really good at all of them. Maybe they should have used him more, but he was just kind of absent from this game against Pitt. Pitt started about 12-0 and there just wasn't much. There wasn't much like impact in the game. He came around a corner for a three, missed it. Defensively, he got beat by Carrington on a drive where he, for the first time, I thought his legs, we talked about McCain yesterday. He's 6'3", 200. He's very thick and very strong. But that was the first time I thought I saw his legs just stuck to the ground a little bit. So worth keeping on. Carrington, by the way, that drive where he beat McCain was really interesting to me. And I went and looked it up. He's actually one of the best isolation players of guys who actually have at least 30 isolation attempts last season coming into the draft. He's in the 75th percentile. The only guy who's actually better is Terrence Shannon Jr., who's that 24-year-old out of Illinois who looks good on a lot of things, but I think that's because he's 24. So Carrington had 71 isolation attempts last year at 6'5", 190 pounds, and he did well. He did not finish well at all. He was one of the worst finishers at all. He had 193 pick and rolls, was in the 85th percentile. So of the guys, that Topic is better. Reed Shepherd is better. Rob Dillingham is better. Jared McCain and Devin Carter are better. But then Bub Carrington is out of Pittsburgh, just 18.9 years old, was next. Also better was, again, Terrence Shannon Jr. So a little interesting. And Carrington kind of bumped off the screen at me as someone who I liked. His overall shooting this year, he was only in the 31st percentile in spot up and 44th percentile in catch and shoot. That's not great. But his jumper off the bounce in 100 attempts, he's the only one in the draft that had 100 attempts, and he's in the 83rd percentile. There's something more to watch on Bub Carrington. So the only guys that were better than him that had at least 30 off the bounce shots last year, and 30 is not a lot, were Reed Shepherd was better than he was. And then Terrence Shannon Jr. again, and that's it. Of guys that I've run. I've got some more guys' numbers I got to run, but that's it. So Bub, in the Pittsburgh Duke game, I kind of kept coming back to this lanky 6'5", 190-pound freshman. He's out of Baltimore, Maryland. So probably worth keeping an eye on him. The other two I watched yesterday were Cody Williams, whose brother is Jalen Williams of Oklahoma City. He's at Colorado. I need to watch more of him. It was interesting. His transition numbers are good, and his rim percentage is great, 96%. And in the game I watched, that wasn't the case. So I do need to go watch it. The thing that jumped out to me the most about him was there were two different attempts in traffic at the rim where he just couldn't really even get up or be strong enough to have much of an impact. I mean, he not only missed, but it was like he didn't have a chance. I do think coaches tell us a lot. And the fact that he was guarding Collier wasn't guarding him. It was the USC game I was watching. Jumps out to me an awful lot. It's clear that his length bothered Collier. Collier did almost nothing when Williams was guarding him. And the minute Williams was off him, Collier was pretty impressive getting to the basket on plays. So the thing on Williams, he's really long and lanky. His body's not mature yet. And you look at his brother, Jalen, who's poof, and you have to try to figure out, like, is that guy, is he ready? Is he going to develop? Because if he is going to develop, then that body's pretty awesome. He was also playing with a mask. And so to some extent, you do kind of wonder whether or not, like, that was bothering him. He's 6'6", 7'1" wingspan. I mean, these numbers, I don't think these numbers can get to 10. This might be the player who you decide that the athletic numbers, 6'6 and a half, 19 and a half years old, 7'1" wingspan, is just so good that you're willing to trade up to get him, because I just don't think he can get to 10. But, you know, he also, and the one thing you do love about him as a player is, you know, the amount of 6'3", 6'6", and a half, 180 pound, really 190 pound players in the NBA are endless, right? So, you know, it's the same thing I said about Ochai Agbaji a lot. We'll see. He's got to make some shots, but is those kind of players last in the league. I just would say I was underwhelmed by his, like, dynamic element of the game. He's just so slim that it just didn't feel like he could impact the game. I didn't leave thinking he was an elite athlete. I left thinking he was an elite body. I didn't leave thinking that he had, like, a handle or something that was, like, on the verge of developing. But he is 6'6 and a half with a 7'1" wingspan. Like, you can't find that. And it is interesting that he was guarding. I thought he was off balance a lot when at speed. And so, frankly, most of the things that I didn't love are all things that, if it's just a case that he's 19, he hasn't come into his body yet compared to his brother, who's, like, just a beast, is then all of it solves itself. Like, the ability to impact the game at the rim solves itself. The ability to be on balance at speed solves itself. Owning your own space solves itself. Probably ability to assert yourself on the game, it solves itself. But as of right now, as he stands, that's the projection you're making. If he's there at 10, I don't think you can pass on 6'6", 7'1" wingspan. And you just better hope he gets stronger. Collier was interesting. I'm going to use a Will Hardy line about Collier. Everything Collier does is loud. And Will would talk about Taylor Horton-Tucker, and he would say, like, well, his mistakes are really loud. So are Collier's. And then his strengths are really loud. So are Taylor's when he does it. I don't think he's Taylor Horton-Tucker. I think he's a poor man's Tyreek Evans, but I can't figure out who that is. Collier is a 6'3", I guess, they're saying, guard at USC. Sorry, Cody Williams, I think I said it. He's at Colorado, freshman. So Collier is 6'3". He's a little older. He's kind of 20 years old. He has a 6'4", 6'5" wingspan. He was the number one player in high school. We did a show for the Everydayers on him recently. Boy, does he have a burst. I mean, like, Gordy Chiesa used to say to me, there's got to be something about a guy that makes you say, oh, shit. And, like, that burst is like, oh, like, he's got power. He's willing to pass. I was super impressed and pleased with the concept that he's later in the year that he's trying to play the right way. He can't shoot. Like, using Ron Boone kind of talks about, like, if a guy's not making shots, I want it to at least look, you know, like he's not in the same zip code on his misses. Like, one of the things he made was a bank shot that he didn't mean to bank. I mean, he misses by so much. It's really unnerving. And so that's loud. Like, his attack to the basket and his physical prowess and his ability to get on the rim is loud. And then his driving and his burst, loud. And then his misses, loud. I said he's a poor man's Tyreek Evans. Honestly, that's Emmanuel Mudiay. And I'm trying to think of who else it is. And Jared Bayless could really shoot it by the end of his career. I really don't have, like, Tyreke Evans. One, I'm not sure what Tyreke Evans does in today's game. But Tyreke Evans was 6'6", and Collier's 6'3", so that's a big difference. And Tyreke Evans, in his first year in the NBA, shot 26% from three. In his second year, he shot 29. His third, he shot 20. And then he went to 33, and then he went to 22. And that's honestly what I think Collier is going to do. And can you survive shooting those kind of numbers, even if you have this incredible, dynamic, powerful, awesome drive to the basket? So a less encouraging day watching draft prospects last night than it was prior. All right. Wolves live another day. We touch on it as we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Rudy Gobert was terrific late in the game. Think anyone mentioned it? Nope. Can we just get some facts out for a second, just because I think I'm speaking to the right audience? But in this series, when Gobert's been on the floor without Cat, the defensive rating is 107. When Gobert and Cat are on the floor together, it's a 111. And when Cat's on by himself, it's a 120. What's interesting to me is this reminds me almost exactly of the Jazz Houston Rockets series against James Harden, when the beginning of Rudy kind of getting torched by the media. And unfairly, I would add. And if my memory on that series is until the last game of that series, this was pre-COVID, so this had to be 17-18 maybe. We'd beaten the Thunder in the first round, or it might have been the first round series loss in 18-19. I think the story on both of them is the same. Didn't we lose to the Rockets in both those 2 years? We lose 4-1 in both. The memory that I have on both of those is that the narrative was that the Jazz defense was a failure and that Rudy was a failure. And the truth was the Jazz scored 90 points in game one, 98 in game two, 101 in game three, and 93 in game five. That no matter how good Rudy was, the offense was so poor that there was no chance that even against that, there was zero chance that against Houston's offense, which was so good, even if Rudy and the defense had an impact and held 6 or 7 points below their average, that you would end up having an impact on that to win the game defensively because the offense wasn't good enough. I feel like that's true in this series too. The league average offensive rating is like 120 now, right? Like if we use cleaning the glass, it's not the average. The average is higher. The best offensive teams are like 120, right? So if we go to cleaning the glass and we look at the regular season, we can look at the playoffs. The playoffs is at a 114.2 is the regular season offense in the playoffs. And the defense in the regular season, it was 115.6. Okay. Boston was a 123 is the best in the league. Oklahoma City was a 120. Dallas, was a 119 on the year. And Minnesota was the 16th ranked offensive team in the league. They just weren't good enough offensively, which may be Rudy's fault, frankly. But and so if I look at game one of this series, Dallas was a 114 offensive rating. That means they had, as I said on the show when we did all the breakdowns, Minnesota had a really good defensive game in game number one. They held Dallas about 4 or 5 points below their average, but their offense just wasn't good enough to get up to snuff. And then in game two of this series, the same thing was kind of true, except for this was more of an offensive game. But Dallas had a better offensive game. They're at 119.5. They were kind of more at the high end. They shot the crap out of it in that game, if you remember correctly. They had an effective field goal percentage of 56% while not turning it over. But Minnesota didn't. Minnesota played a 118. And then in game three, Dallas kind of broke Minnesota down, and that was the first time where Dallas just was unreal offensively in that game. They shot lights out. They were 14 of 28 from three. They had effective field goal percentage 66%, but also somewhat similar to that Houston series, Minnesota stopped believing in their defense. It actually worked in game one, and I actually don't think you have a choice. I think you have to change it because the players don't believe it anymore. And then last night, the defense was great at 109.7, the offense wasn't that great. It was a 115.2, which is right on league average for the playoffs. But what it tells me is that still the issue for Minnesota as the series goes on is, are they good enough offensively against Dallas to actually win enough games? And that's last night where they shot it really, really well. What was the case for them last night? And they got Cat to finally go off as Cat won 4 of 5. And so Rudy's defense gets blamed. Now, we won't hear Rudy playing about, well, actually, Draymond, I'll give him credit. Gave Rudy credit that he was physical throughout the game. And then the final 2 plays of the game, Rudy played defense. And if you actually look back at the last 2 games of the other games, there's about 4 plays in which Rudy's isolated on Luka, and Luka scores on 2 of the 4. Like, if you kind of take you can't expect Rudy to do more than that. Because any other big, he's scoring on 3 or 4 of the 4. So I find some of this hard to listen to. Interesting story that Chris Finch got back in the huddles last night for Minnesota coaching. I thought that was interesting. That was an important win for Minnesota. I'm a big believer that the thing that's not talked about enough in this league is scars. The scars you get after losing series and the scars that break up teams. And that'll prevent their scar from being as significant. All right, a few other little news notes for you. Pretty cool. Anthony Edwards saw Micah Parsons after the game, the Dallas Cowboy player, and according to John Kaczynski of The Athletic, Parsons asked him what his shoe size was so he could bring him shoes for game 6. Pretty strong. Alan Horton was interviewing Kyle Anderson after the game and asked him if he thought they were having played enough playing enough against Luka, they're beginning to get a feel for him. And he was like, nope, he's too good, which was really funny. Jazz worked out Antonio Reeves of Kentucky. He was a senior this year, 20 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, shot at great 52, 45, 86. 6'6" senior, so interesting body. Keith Pompey of Locked On Sixers and the Philadelphia Inquirer reports that the Sixers would give Jimmy Butler a max extension if traded from Miami. And oh, by the way, one other note. I watched USC. Bronny's not good. He's not an NBA player. It's all clickbait. Don't fall for it. Have a great day. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. If you're on YouTube, we'll now send you to Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream. If you're on audio, check it out on YouTube at Locked On Sports Today.